Beyond War. Last night, I had the most beautiful dream. By Brad Reynolds. Last night, I had the most beautiful dream I ever had before. Some might call it an impossible dream or strange. I call it wonderful. It's a dream we all could share. I dreamed I was in a mighty room, and the room was filled with men. Military men, political men, capitalistic men, communist men, revolutionary men, even kings, powerful men of all races and nations.
There were some women there too, but mostly men. Yet the women were there encouraging the men to do the right thing and save the world.
I wondered if this room was the United Nations, but I knew that place wasn't really united, just a hall for men to fight with words and deceit. This was an even mightier room. Here the men came to lose face, not save face. They were going to do it all together, all at once, no longer demanding revenge or compensation for past wounds and grievances. They were all doing this for their ancestors, as well as for themselves and their posterity. What made last night's dream so strange, but beautiful, was that the whole world had agreed to put an end to war, and they would never fight again. It was clear as day, this dream, a lucid reality. All those powerful women and men, leaders of the world, were all agreeing, all together now, representing everybody all at once, that unless human beings come together to formally establish and legally maintain cooperation and tolerance, they will inevitably sink into grossly inhumane and universally destructive behavior, as human history has proven time and time again, for centuries, for millennia.
In this mighty dream, I was in a room where humankind as a whole were all agreeing to move beyond war. And the papers they were signing said, miraculously, they'd never fight again. Last night I had the most beautiful dream. By everyone losing face together, or surrendering and releasing their own egoic, or national or tribal stance. The collective of human beings will be able to regenerate the moral strength and authority necessary to allow the human species to acquire the ability for cooperation and tolerance for each other and their varied differences. Only when there is first a universal loss of face, where ego-I is set aside or transcended and included, instead of saving face, where countless eyes demand they get their way, regardless of anybody else's wants or needs, will we, as the human race, have any hope of finding peace?
Otherwise, there will only be constant war and brutal battles for domination and control by different nations or tribes or systems of human gatherings. It is only by losing face, or transcending ego, will there be the possibility of a universally equalized morality and the justified credibility to serve the future transformation of consciousness, both individually and collectively. This process is the only real way to maintain a legally recognized universal agreement about creating and generating a truly cooperative and tolerant global human community.
Once we acknowledge we are all in one boat, that our unity as the human race is a scientific fact and is grounded in our prior unity with a transcendental divine reality, can humankind finally operate as a totality, no longer caught in a perpetual battle of divisive tribalisms. Only then will we live together, recognizing our innate identity or being not two with God and with each other and all of nature. Only this expansive and spiritual view of reality will establish the righteous and necessary conditions for global peace. Recognizing our biological unity as a species and understanding the indivisible unity of living in a single world is the key to a new kind of evolved human consciousness. Indeed, it's essential that the universal collective of humankind formally embrace and enact this universal moral disposition of unity in diversity. Tolerance, cooperation, love, peace, justice, now.
That, my dear friends, was the vivid feeling I had late last night in the most beautiful dream I ever dreamed before.
Last night I had the strangest dream I'd ever dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. I dreamed I saw a mighty room filled with women and men, and the paper they were signing said they'd never fight again. And when the paper was all signed and 1,000,000 copies made, they all joined hands and bowed their heads, and grateful prayers were prayed. And the people in the streets below were dancing round and round, while swords and guns and uniforms were scattered on the ground. And when the paper was all signed and 1,000,000 copies made, they all joined hands and bowed their heads, and grateful prayers were prayed. And the people in the streets below were dancing round and round, while swords and guns and uniforms were scattered on the ground. Last night I had the strangest dream I'd ever dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war.
That, my dear friends, was the vivid feeling I had late last night in the most beautiful dream I ever dreamed before. By facing reality and losing face, everybody all at once had recognized the present-time urgency calling for the survival of the world family of Earthkind, including humans, indeed, calling for the survival of Earth itself. This approach is the best way to deal with and transcend the global mood of political separatism, endgame competitiveness, and endlessly multiplied divisiveness. In this mighty room filled with these authoritative men and women, they all signed a treaty where all had unanimously agreed to thoroughly and universally and permanently relinquish the ego place of priorly assumed disunity, and thus of separateness, domination, and control. Instead, this mighty document declared, this global treaty all had signed, that for all future time, everyone will live from the heart place of prior unity, operating with ego-transcending cooperation and tolerance.
High upon the wall above this mighty room, surrounded by multicolored flags flying from every nation, was the great yet simple formula for world peace. Cooperation plus tolerance equals peace, or C plus T equals P for short, also known as the peace law. This bright message was being transmitted around the world on every television, computer screen, and smartphone, printed in every newspaper, shared in the streets on every corner. Everybody had all agreed to embrace this truly effective means for establishing a genuine recognition of our unity in diversity. E pluribus unum, out of many one. This view, therefore, must become the necessary politics for humankind as a whole to stop all wars and end the endless battles of previous generations. I dreamed I saw the beginning of a new age in thinking, one where everybody all together lived in cooperation, tolerance, and peace. As one spiritual master of the times explains, quote, "The key to this is love. Love is ego-surrendering, ego-forgetting, and ego-transcending participation in the indivisible oneness and wholeness and singleness that is reality itself. Therefore, love is also right living." Unquote. In my dream, people knew that all future generations would agree, because once peace on earth had been firmly established, there would be no need to fight or make war. Everybody all together had realized, and will realize, that once the ego, or each individual self who feels separated from others, is allowed to grow up in peace and to be healthy, then people will naturally wake up to the spiritual nature of the universe as a multi-dimensional cosmos, since this view embodies the living truth of reality itself.
When this happens, each and every person will be able to clean up their shadows and the dark places in their souls and wounded psyches. Then, we will be able to show up with creative energy and a free mind, living happily together in peace. Then, humanity will clean up the earth for all living beings as the atomic periodic table of elements will thrive in harmony, thus assuring our survival on this beautiful blue pearl of life floating in the vast dark sea of space.
People will come to know that every human heart is willing to accept and live by this great formula for world peace. After these papers were all signed, everybody could join in by cooperating with each other and being tolerant of one another, loving one another as ourselves, thus giving peace a chance. Imagine there are no countries, no boundaries, no divisions, nothing to kill or die for, and no religious wars too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. That was my dream last night, yet I'm not the only one, by far.
strangest dream I ever had before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. To war. I dreamed it was a mighty room, and the room was filled with men, and the papers they were signing said they'd never fight again. And when the papers were all signed and 1,000,000 copies made, they all joined hands and circled round, and grateful prayers they gave. And the people on the streets below, they were dancing round and round, with guns and swords and uniforms all scattered on the ground. The ground. Last night I had the strangest dream I ever had before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. To war. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war.
Next, let me take some time to explain this vision of peace to you. Such an intelligent and heartfelt position is not the search for peace, since all seeking is based on a presumed separation from what is being sought, but an active affirmation, an enactment of peace that makes all the difference in the world. The awakened presumption of prior and always already unity and non-conflict based upon authentic and verifiable spiritual truths must be the condition to be always affirmed, depended upon, enacted, and preserved. That was what this treaty paper said when signed in this mighty room. It was a declaration of interdependence stating the true and only means for the realization of world peace. In the most beautiful dream I ever dreamed, people had come to realize in practical terms that it is only with the active foundation of ego-transcending cooperative tolerance that makes such a perspective even possible for peace and right life to be established among living beings in any form or kind. People only want to be happy, to love their families and friends, to be creatively engaged and work peacefully in the world, to have an equal opportunity to be the best they can be. For in truth, everybody is born free. Thus the cultural chains and crimes which have bound them to the past shall be released, so everyone, humankind as a whole, can live a life of liberty and justice in the pursuit of happiness and well-being. This mighty global treaty, being signed by all nations representing all people, will declare that this is the future promise and purpose of humankind's life on Earth. What a beautiful dream this was.
Hereafter, everybody will live in good company with one another, regardless of race, ethnicity, religious beliefs, or sexual orientation, so that never again will anyone enter into divisiveness or other forms of destructive behavior without intervention and therapy. Crime and evil will be cured, not locked up. Everyone will treat their neighbor as themselves. All will live under fair laws, voted on by the people and for the people, where no one person will be above the law, no matter how rich or famous. In my dream last night, I saw humanity in wholeness agree to end all war and live in peace. It was the most beautiful dream I've ever dreamed.
Last night I had the strangest dream I'd ever dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. I dreamed I saw a mighty room filled with women and men, and the paper they were signing said they'd never fight again. And when the paper was all signed and 1,000,000 copies made, they all joined hands and bowed their heads, and grateful prayers were prayed. And the people in the streets below were dancing round and round, while swords and guns and uniforms were scattered on the ground. Last night I had the strangest dream I'd never dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war, an end to war, an end to war. Let's end this war.
this dream, I also saw that all children living in every nation on earth will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I had a dream where little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and little white girls as sisters and brothers. I had a dream last night. It was a dream where all of God's children were able to sing together. Let freedom ring, sweet land of liberty, let freedom ring. From the Yangtze River of China to the Amazon and Congo basins, freedom will ring. From Mount Fuji to Mount Everest, from Lookout Mountain in Tennessee to the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, from the peaks of the Andes to the halls of Montezuma, from the Ganges to the Blue Danube, freedom rings. From the British Isles to the islands of Fiji, from the Americas to Afghanistan, from New Zealand to Zimbabwe, freedom is ringing. Great God Almighty, let freedom ring. And when those papers had all been signed, there were billions of copies made, and people far and wide, here and near, all joined hands and prayed. The exact price for freedom and peace, the treaty cost for the survival of humankind, Earthkind and Earth itself, had been paid by losing face and setting I, me, mine aside. When freedom, justice and peace, with no war no more, are allowed to thrive, then the necessary new paradigm for the human design of future effort is permitted to ring aloud. The chimes of freedom will ring from every city and every hamlet, from every nation and every country, in every culture, tribe and religion, as we finally realize that great day when all of God's children, black and white, brown and yellow, Jews and Arabs, Protestants and Catholics, Buddhists and Hindus, people of every faith and persuasion, atheist or agnostic, will all be able to join hands and sing the mighty words, "Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last."
Last night I had the strangest dream I ever had before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. I saw a mighty room, and the room was filled with men, and the papers they were signing said they'd never fight again. Papers were all signed and 1,000,000 copies made. They all joined hands and bowed their scattered on the ground. Last night I had the strangest dream I ever had before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to
Then suddenly, I woke up from this dream to find a world still at war. So I got down upon my knees to pray and imagine a world where we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, that they all are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, justice, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted by the people, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And when, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to governments that suppress these rights or become destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter and institute new government. We the people shall lay its foundations upon such equitable grounds and with such just moral and ethical principles so as to organize that government's powers of the people, by the people, and for the people to exist in such form as to seem most likely to affect the safety and happiness for themselves and their posterity.
Thus I heard it said, as a great United States president explained, we all want a genuine global peace, not merely a Pax Americana enforced on the world by weapons of war, nor the peace of the grave or the blanket of a slave, he emphasized, but the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind of peace that enables people and nations to grow and to hope and to build a better life for their children. Not merely peace in our time, but peace for all time. Total war makes no sense in an age when nations can maintain large and relatively invulnerable nuclear forces, he warned. This president acknowledged that the pursuit of peace might not be as dramatic as the pursuit of war. Yet such peace and prosperity was the necessary rational end of rational people. He told us that some say this is useless or a mere fantasy or a deluded dream, to speak of world peace and world law and world disarmament because war is inevitable, that humankind is doomed, that we are gripped by forces we cannot control. Therefore, he maintained that the desire to bring peace should begin by looking inward and then by examining our own attitudes toward the possibilities of inner peace and of world peace. Yet, this man was wise enough to know that, on a practical level, a more attainable peace would not be based on a sudden revolution in human nature, but on a gradual evolution in human institutions. He told us that humanity's reason and spirit has often solved the seemingly unsolvable, and we can do it again. Genuine peace must be the product of many nations, the sum of many acts. It must be dynamic, not static, changing to meet the challenges of each new generation. For peace is a process, a way of solving problems. That it is the responsibility of all citizens in all nations to respect the rights of all others and to respect the law of the land.
Indeed, this great man, who himself was brought down by an assassin's bullet, asks,
And is not peace, in the last analysis, basically a matter of human rights? The right to live out our lives without fear of devastation, the right to breathe air as nature provided it, the right of future generations to a healthy existence. So let us not be blind to our differences, but let us also direct attention to our common interests and the means by which those differences can be resolved. And if we cannot end now our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. What kind of a peace do we seek? I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living. Not merely peace in our time, peace in all time. Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
Only by following the wisdom of the wisest among us will my most beautiful dream, your dream, our dream, become real, no longer merely a dream but a living reality. If we do it together. Once war and fighting, killing and brutality has been thoroughly and universally and permanently relinquished, then the entire world population of humankind becomes enlightened with the heart-positive mind of cooperation and tolerance. Honestly, this is the only true way to solve the current world crisis. By transcending the destructive tendencies of the ego mind as I, me, mine, trapped in dreadful fear of the other. This solution is not merely a political gesture or psychological healing, but is a profoundly spiritual act. Indeed, losing face or surrendering the boundaries of ego-I is itself spirit in action. It is the heart in action. It is the heart awakened. It is God realized in the here and now, where and when all people are set free from bondage to self and conditional forms as an addiction, as a self-defeating problem. This isn't just some fancy illusion or a misguided dream, but is an attainable reality since it is based in reality itself, based on our prior unity as the human race and being part of a divine process. Such a vision is based on our real developmental growth as human beings, actualizing our full potential. Bring forth the light that's within you, for even darkness leads to God.
We now know, unlike previous generations, that all human beings are created equal as one biological species, regardless of race or culture or religion. scientific facts and DNA molecules have proven that all people, Homo sapiens sapiens, stood up on two legs with big brains and walked out of Africa in a great global human diaspora. All of us have descended with variation from a common ancestor, the mitochondrial Eve in Africa. This means that everybody's root ancestors were black-skinned. So get over it, because black is beautiful. By populating this entire planet, we are one human race who have evolved together into one extraordinary human family of unending diversity. We now have the moral responsibility to accept and assure this multicultural diversity in order for the planet as a whole to survive and thrive long into the future. Therefore, as one human family, we must and we will and we can co-create this dream together by making it into a living, breathing reality. Yet, morally enlightened leadership and visionary integral thinkers, women and men, young and old, must lead the way as we, everybody all at once, assume responsibility for the human species on Earth. This is really the first time ever in all of human history that humankind has even been in the position to consider this great possibility. Previously, our tribal and national and racial identities limited our global perspective. But now, obviously, humankind as a whole has no choice but to deal with it. This change must happen for the entire world family of Earthkind by living in the heart place of prior unity, where not two is peace.
Last night I had the strangest dream I ever dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. I dreamed I saw a mighty room. The room was filled with men, and the paper they were signing said they'd never fight again. And when the papers all were signed, 1,000,000 copies made, they all joined hands and bowed their heads, and grateful prayers were prayed. And the people in the streets below were dancing round and round, and guns and swords and uniforms were scattered on the ground. Last night I had the strangest dream I ever dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end